Hi guys, welcome back to Run Watches. Today I'm going to be doing a review on my most worn watch, my SKX013. I'm going to talk about the specs of this watch, my experience wearing it, and also I'm going to do a kind of quick comparison between it and the 007, just to cover all the differences between the two watches, because there's actually a few. Okay, so let's start off with the dimensions of the SKX013. First up, the diameter is 38mm. This often misquoted as 37mm, but this is referring to the outer diameter of the bezel. That is the correct way to measure the SKX007, as the bezel overhangs the case a little. On the 013 here, the bezel doesn't overhang, so the case is the larger size. The lug slug is 44.3mm, and the lug width is a perfect 20mm, meaning strap options are basically unlimited. Finally, the thickness of the SKX013 is 13.2mm, which I think is reasonable for a kind of lower priced dive watch. And on my 6.5 inch wrist doesn't feel too bulky. Another factor to bear in mind when talking about the size of this watch is of course its 4 o'clock crown. This just affects the way the watch wears on the wrist, and for me makes the watch feel a little bit smaller and definitely more compact. So those are the case specs. Now the bracelet is kind of a contentious point for the SKX in general, and the 013 is no exception. On first inspection it is really flimsy. And loud, to be honest. But I think after you fit it to your wrist, it is firstly a lot quieter, and it's really comfortable, as it's a nice loose Jubilee. It's also quite easy to get a comfortable fit, because there's lots of removable links, and there's 5 micro adjustment holes on the stamped clasp. The clasp has a pretty standard 2-step system to secure it. Although the construction is all just stamped in folded metal, I've never had mine fail. And it's probably been done up and undone hundreds of times at this point. The safety catch has a nice Seiko logo, as you can see, and it works really fine. Moving on to the case back, you have of course Seiko's Wave logo, along with some text. The important pieces of text here are stainless steel. In case you weren't sure, this is a stainless steel dive watch. Makes sense as it's more resistant to corrosion. Next it says Seiko, because I guess you've got to brand the part. Next is 7S26, which is the movement in the SKX013. We'll get onto that in a minute. And scuba divers, which again shows that this is designed to be used by divers, and it's therefore designed to comply with ISO. Now to the front of this watch, let's start with the bezel. It's a 120 click bezel, with a nice texture for a little grip. It's kind of hard to operate with gloves, or if you're a bit sweaty. As I mentioned before, the bezel doesn't overhang the edge of the case, so that kind of makes it harder to get a purchase. The bezel insert is a nice black aluminium timing bezel, with the minutes marked all the way around, and of course a triangle and a loom pip at 12 o'clock. Also has the minutes indicated in 10-minute intervals all the way around. The dial of the SKX013 is of course designed for high visibility, so it features a large triangle at 12, large round circles for most of the hour markers except for 9 and 6, which are larger again. All these markers are Seiko's proprietary Lumi Bright, which along with the hands really helps to tell time in low light or low visibility. The text on the dial is very simple and clear. At 12, just below a triangle it says Seiko and automatic, and then at 6 o'clock, just above that larger marker, it says in kind of an orangey red text, divers 200 meters. Both of those again reassuring you this is a dive watch, and informing you that this is in fact rated to 200 meter water resistance, which I believe is an ISO requirement for a dive watch. Finally, the last text on the dial is just down on the edge of the dial by the 6 o'clock marker. Is that same movement code we saw on the case back, 7S26. The final part of the dial is of course that rather large date window at 3 o'clock, which allows you to see the day-date complication that the 7S26 has. While some really hate date complications, I think the execution here is pretty good, as it's balanced by the larger marker at 9. The hands here are pretty classic Seiko. Plenty of Seiko Loom Bright Loom, the same stuff used on the dial. And the second hand is also white to help it stand out even more against the black dial. I really like this handset. It's actually slightly different from the SKX007 handset. Most noticeably with that white seconds hand. Also with the hour and minutes hands, I just prefer the proportion and shape of them. That's subjective, but I think they're a bit more refined. Finally, for the crystal of the SKX013, we have Seiko's proprietary Hardlex. People often complain about this because it's not sapphire. However, I've never personally scratched mine, and I haven't actually heard many horror stories about people damaging these. I should imagine a direct hit or a really bad glancing blow could damage it, but that's also the case with sapphire or acrylic. Okay, so now for the internals of the SKX013. It uses the aforementioned 7S26 movement, which, as you would expect, is an in-house Seiko caliber. It has 21 joules with a day-date complication. It beats at 21,600 beats per hour. These movements don't have the best reputation, and they're often cheaper to just straight up replace instead of attempting to service. You can upgrade these movements as well to other Seiko calibers. Thanks to the modding community, they've really figured that out and made it quite streamlined now. I've personally never had issue with mine, and it's kind of accurate enough for a beta watch for me, but I think I do kind of have a good example. One of the main arguments that discouraged me from buying an SKX013 at first was the lack of available parts for modification. However, in the few years I've owned mine, that has changed quite a bit, and there's now more available parts on the market to make custom builds and projects out of these watches. So my personal 013 just has a silver coloured bezel insert. I just like this simple style and didn't really want to mess with the design of the watch too much. I may also add a coin edge bezel, which is now available. However, I don't really want to mess with the factory dial and hands, and I don't want to compromise the water resistance of my personal watch. There you go, guys, there's my collection review on the SKX013. I really like this watch. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe below, and also just drop a comment saying what you'd like to see next. Also check out our other videos. We've done a couple reviews, we have a podcast, a load of cool stuff like that.
I do what I want, I'm gonna sing and I'm gonna sing. I do what I want.